Greetings, humans! My name is Josh Smokey Hell Nelson, and this is The Smoke Show. Before we get into the usual podcast niceties, I would like to share some words, a verbal pouring one out, for my beloved Cowboys' recently ended season. In the immortal words of Neil Young, it is better to burn out than to fade away. The fuck does Neil Young know? How's Pono going, Neil? Anyways, the Cowboys certainly burned themselves out by taking pre-snap penalty after pre-snap penalty. 14 in total. They shot themselves so much that you would think Plaxico Burress was calling plays. And this is not on the refs, so don't go blaming them. The undisciplined play of the anemic offense was the number one thing that cost them that game. Calling a quarterback sneak with 14 seconds left because San Fran had finally taken away the perimeter, instead of taking a deep shot or two or the jump ball option on that play design, was basically throwing the towel in, especially with that sloppy execution. You shouldn't have to have relied on a ref trotting his ass down a field and breaking through the O-line to properly spot the ball to spike it with a fraction of a second left. The offense got outplayed by the 49ers defense, and the team got outcoached in nearly every facet of the game. The 49ers deserve to win with how they played, and that pains every fiber of my being to say, being a Cowboys fan, but it's the truth. The fans and that team themselves deserved a better showing than what was brought to the field on Sunday. But enough about that pitiful playoff exit. An honest assessment of the year is needed, and that will take some time to properly convey. However, let's say a few things on that. In June, I predicted this team to go 10-7. 2 games under what they ended up finishing, you fucking trolls. I'm actually pretty thrilled about that. The big key to that miss by me was the ascension of this defense, largely in part due to Micah Parsons' otherworldly talent and versatility, and everyone buying into what Dan Quinn was selling. Now, that was evident when Quinn had to take over coaching duties the week that McCarthy had COVID. You could tell that that team wanted to go out there and win, not for McCarthy, but for Quinn. The McCarthy farce needs to end. This guy fed the right amount of sugary bullshit on a silver spoon to Jerry Jones to get the position in the first place. And I have been against it from day one. Kick his ass to the curb and promote someone who actually has the respect of this young, talented team, Mr. Dan Quinn. He's been there before and hasn't been fantastic, but let's not forget that was in Atlanta, and that organization has its own whole set of issues. Safe comments. Give Kellen Moore another year to develop as an OC without the influence of that fish-faced grimace busting through the seams of his blue tracksuit. If that doesn't work, then next offseason, blow the damn thing up. No more of these games where I see Tony Pollard getting more receptions than CeeDee Lamb. Like, seriously? 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 targets to Lamb. In what fucking universe is a team giving 10 targets to Cedric Wilson and half of that to Cedarian Lamb, the first-round stud wide receiver that has only averaged nearly 1,100 all-purpose yards over his first 2 NFL seasons? You're telling me that you can't find more targets for him than Cedric Wilson? That is a tragic amount of usage for one of the most talented players on this entire offense. And speaking of talent, why is Zeke getting so much run over Pollard on a torn PCL that has allegedly been torn since week 4? Dak got as many carries as Pollard. Even CeeDee got a quarter of Pollard's carries in that first round exit. I'm just so frustrated that a team with the plethora of talented personnel from sideline to sideline could underperform this bad in the biggest game that mattered. Right. We were supposed to be giving a quick assessment of the year. Bottom line, I'm not satisfied. And the players probably aren't either, you know? The offseason begins now. And it's a matter of who stays and who goes that really dictates the direction of this team heading into 2022. One thing I know for sure, I am much more confident in our defense than I was a year ago. I'm really hoping Jerry just throws the checkbook at Dan Quinn so he doesn't go anywhere. I think he is the key to maximizing the potential of this young defensive unit with multiple Pro Bowlers. If Leighton Vander Esch isn't re-signed, I'm not overly put out by it, you know? Jabril Cox will be able to step in and at least provide the floor that Vander Esch would while not being as much of an injury liability. The only phase of the game that I'm not hugely critical of at this point is the special teams unit. I thought Fossil did a great, adequate job. I only hope we're signing or drafting a kicker because Greg the Leg definitely cost us at least one game this year. Whether you chalk that up to recovering from a later injury heading into the season or not, Zerline underperformed. And we can't afford to let games slip away because of important misses. Speaking of misses, our once league-dominant offensive line has eroded away to Swiss cheese. Aside from Zach Martin and Lael Collins, when he isn't taking stupid penalties. Thankfully, the 2022 draft class has some great pieces on either side of the line, and Dallas would be wise to invest heavily in that area. I am exhausting a lot of the effort I have left on these Cowboys, so let's send this intro off with some questions from the people. Coach Craig asks, are they going to bring Big Mike McCarthy back? Much to the chagrin of Cowboys fans and fans of good football in general, the writing is on the wall and everything points to McCarthy's return for at least the start of next season. The Cowboys did show improvement from year 1 to year 2 in the McCarthy system, and I think that is what bought him a little extra time. It certainly wasn't his player management, clock management, or play calling that earned it. Coach Craig also asks, is Michael Gallup going to be back? I love Michael Gallup. Let's just get that out of the way right now. Before the season started, I knew it was a likely possibility that this was either Gallup's or Amari Cooper's last season as a Cowboy, as Gallup is a free agent, and there is a sweet out in Amari's contract should we choose to take it. The late season injury to Gallup was a heartbreaker. I feel so bad for him. But it might be a blessing in disguise for the Cowboys. If that ACL tear allows the Cowboys to bring Gallup back on the cheap, that might be beneficial for everyone involved. Gallup doesn't need to learn a new system or build rapport with a new quarterback, and the Cowboys don't have to lose a great deep threat. My money is on Gallup re-signing with the team on a team-friendly, incentive-laden contract, maybe 1 or 2 years. TBG asks, are Dan Quinn and Kellen Moore in this for the long run? It's no secret that there are a lot of teams coming calling for one of the top offenses and one of the top defenses in the league this year. And with how they both performed, I'd have to say it's likely that one or both could be moving on. If you asked me this preseason, I would have defended Kellen to the death and thrown the checkbook at him. I'm throwing checkbooks today, man. Do checkbooks even exist anymore? Can we get confirmation on that? I would be backing up the truck to make sure he doesn't go anywhere. However, now I wouldn't be overly upset if Moore did move on. His lack of adjustments, both in-game and as the season wore on, were near non-existent. Yes, he can draw up some pretty inventive trick plays to keep opposing defenses on their toes, but he's also not using his number one weapon in CeeDee Lamb properly, and I am not alone in this. As Troy Aikman himself ran on record this week, just as perplexed as I am about the lack of targets and usage for Lamb in that first round exit. More on Troy later. Now, perhaps some of these faults could be attributed to Mike McCarthy, which is why I hope Kellen Moore is retained by Dallas one more year. As far as Dan Quinn goes, I hope against hope that he is back. These boys, especially the defense, they play for him. He has been nothing short of inspirational to these young men, and I think that's the best thing for their development as a unit. And just continuing under Dan Quinn, please. I wouldn't be upset to see McCarthy's ass booted down the road and DQ be given the reins to this team. Coach Greg asks, where else can they improve on this team? Will Zeke be healthy? Will Pollard be healthy? Personally, I think the offensive line is the number one priority, with a linebacker and cornerback high on the list. If we could re-sign Jaron Kearse, I'd like that for at least another season. As far as the health of Zeke and Pollard go, that is on them to get their asses in shape and healthy by the time OTAs roll around. If both those backs are healthy and the O-line shows any improvement, Dallas has 13 to 14 win potential. What I would like to see, though, is more of a 60-40 split. Just to try it out, you know. Time for one last question to wrap this up, and I think it's a fascinating one. My man Derek asks, will the Dallas Cowboys ever build a culture of accountability? Short answer, no. I mean, not until Jerry Jones kicks the bucket and this team is inherited by Steven. Jerry has clearly not made accountability a priority in his 33 years as owner and GM, based off of, well, the last 33 years of Dallas Cowboys football. Jerry just wants to win, and honestly, that's one of his best qualities. His hubris in managerial control has led to some many questionable moments, but how can you deny the drafting that they've done recently? But a culture of accountability? It won't be from on high. It won't even be from McCarthy. Or else we would have seen it this year. If ever a culture of accountability is to be fostered and grown, then it's going to have to come down to the leadership team on the roster. I mean, Dak and Micah need to be the ones that make that a priority if it's ever to happen. Let's just say, though, that I'm not holding my breath. The immortal words of Forrest Gump. That's all I got to say about that. Thank you for joining me today. That was a meaty intro of nutritional goodness. Should we get into this podcast? Yeah, let's get into this podcast. If you are listening on Spotify, please take the half second to leave a 5-star rating, as they are new to Spotify, and I want all the stars like Mario 64. Use the other half second from earlier and hit the subscribe button on the way out. I greatly appreciate it. As always, this podcast is proudly presented by the Fantasy Points Media Group. Now, for the uninitiated, the Fantasy Points Media Group is home to a collection of the most knowledgeable and profitable minds in the industry. You like money? You like fantasy points? Now, what are you waiting for? From statistical analysis to DFS betting knowledge in multiple sports to the hottest new prospects coming out of the college ranks, the Fantasy Points Media Group has a show that will cover your needs and more. Now, the benevolent parent behind that group is fantasypoints.com, which is having a super early bird promo on membership, which means my code isn't even active until after the Super Bowl because this promo is so ridiculous. 25% off. Oh! When you sign up right now at fantasypoints.com, fantasypoints.com, getting you fantasy points and so much more. Now, on today's show, we are checking in with the people to see what celebrity athlete interactions they've had, positive or negative, and how those turned out. Also, we will be going through our predictions for the remainder of the NFL playoffs, including some moments that even surprised me. Without further ado, let's do this! Smoke Show! To kick off our celebrity athlete interaction segment, I am going to share one of my experiences. Then we're going to turn to the sponsor, the SportsMe app, to get the stories of the people. Then we'll end it off on another story from my collection. Go to getsportsme.com or your app store to download my favorite app that isn't named Twitter or Spotify. Whether it's dropping your hottest takes or battling with others on theirs or interacting with some of the professional athletes and analysts on SportsMe, you will not be disappointed. Trust me, man. Hit me up at Smokey Hell NFL on the SportsMe app, and you might just find yourself on a future episode of The Smoke Show. Now, take a trip back in time with me to August 1995, when I, a lad of just 12 years of age, was on my first cross-country trip to visit my brother out in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. For those who don't know where that is. It was the first NFL exhibition game in Canada. They called it the American Bowl, and it was basically a rehash of the old Super Bowl there. So Cowboys and Bills. Now, the day before the game, there was an open practice where you can go like right down to the field side and, see the players, get autographs, talk to them or whatever. And so me, my brother, who was 15 years old, so he was 27 at the time, and his best friend, we go on down to the field side and, sitting there talking to Nate Newton, like, there's just the players everywhere. I've never experienced something like this. I grew up on and still live on Vancouver Island, which is on the west coast of Canada there. It's just kind of, you don't grow up seeing stuff like this. So we're getting all these autographs, and one of the players just like, if you want to get some more autographs or whatever, this is the hotel we're staying at. There might be some players in the lobby. And we're like, why not, man? What else are we doing? So we hoof it on out of there and we go down to the hotel. And sure enough, a bunch of guys just hanging out in the lobby. Just like, holy shit. And I spy over in the corner Emmitt Smith. I was just like, holy shit. I've got his rookie card on me. What are the chances? Well, I mean, higher because we know. Anyways. So I very respectfully, remember, I was 12 years old, small kid. I was never big. Still waiting on that growth spurt at 40. So I walk up to Emmitt Smith and just real respectfully, I was just like, excuse me, Mr. Smith. I was wondering if I can get an autograph, please. And he looks at me, puts his headphones in and just goes, pfft, and looks the other way. And I'm broken. I'm heartbroken. Like, I was crushing. So I just walk away dejected. Just like, what processing? What the hell just happened? And I see a bunch of people going towards the front lobby doors or whatever, the sliding glass type. And I'm like, oh, okay, someone big's got to be coming in. So kind of worm my way to the front because I'm a little guy. It's easy. And as I do, the doors open up and in walks Troy Aikman. My jaw just drops. I look up and my hand kind of reflexively goes up and I'm just like, hi, Mr. Aikman. He grabs my hand, gives me a handshake and a big smile, and his people get around him and get him up to his room or whatever. I'm just like, I'm looking at my hand like, oh my God, 2 Super Bowls at that time. And holy shit. And that, despite Emmitt Smith's absolute douchebaggery. Yeah, fuck you, Emmitt. Despite that, it ended on a high note. And I got to say, I'm a Cowboys fan for life. And, that's one of my favorite stories. I love it. But I got interested. What are some other stories that people had with their interactions with celebrity athletes? Let's find out.
So I've had a lot of good interactions, but nobody wants to hear about that. So I'll tell you about my one and only bad one, and that's Alfonso Soriano when he was coming over to the Nationals from the Rangers. He sat for a few weeks because he wanted to play second base and they wanted to play the outfield, and he made a whole pity party about it. First game back, I was actually sitting behind the batter circle, and I heckled him. He gets up, hits a double, and as he's coming back in, I said, I hope you enjoy being on second base because that's the only time we'd be there today. And he flipped me off, and it was on ESPN, and it was pretty awesome.
I saw Odell Beckham Jr. in traffic in Weehawken, in Jersey. So obviously Odell wanted to be seen. He's driving around in a red-ass McLaren with the windows down and top down. So he wanted to be seen. I saw him turn, I saw his blonde hair. He had blonde hair still at the time. I said, that looked like Odell Beckham Jr. I was able to pull up beside of him, and it was Odell Beckham Jr. I rolled the window down, I go, yo, Odell. And he looks at me. So I kind of panic. I'm like, oh shit, it is Odell Beckham Jr. The only thing I could say was, hey, good luck next week. Gave me a nod, gave me the peace sign, and then took off. Now, he must have been late, because the way he was driving, no one should be driving like that. And if you're going to use my story, you're going to have to tag me, Smoke. Come on now.
Smokey, what's good? You know me. I like to spread positivity. I've told this story before on the app, but I'm going to tell it again because I like this guy and I like people to know that he's a good dude. So, one of the nicest players in the NBA is Derrick Rose. I've met him a few times. Some of my friends have played with him or grew up playing AAU with him. And one time after I'd already met him a few times, I was out at a dinner and he was there. A lot of NBA guys were there. So he was one of many. So I show up and he comes up to me and he's like, oh, hey, good to see you again. Glad you're here. And we talked for a little bit and then went back to my seat and I ate. Now, that's not a big thing, but I say you can often judge people by the small things because, a lot of NBA guys there. There's money, they're famous. Yeah, they're off in their own world and they don't have to pay attention to people and they can ignore people and be rude if they want to. And people keep coming back and dealing with it. And so ate dinner, left. And then before I left, he came back up to me and said, hey, thanks for coming. It was good to see you. Again, small things, but very indicative of Rose's character. Very thoughtful, very kind, very humble too, which all things considered and what he's accomplished, especially at such a young age, is pretty remarkable. So Derrick Rose, great guy.
So back in his first year as a starter, so third year in the pros, I met Aaron Rodgers at a party with mutual friends because we're from the same town, and had a beer with him, sitting on the couch watching football. And because I'm a Cowboys fan, he decided to heckle me and laugh his butt off about beating the Cowboys and ripping our heart out for the first of many times. And he did warn me that he was going to do it his entire career because he grew up hating the Cowboys. The dude's a man of his word.
What up, Smokey? Fantasy Sven here. Just, unfortunately have COVID, so I'm quarantining right now. I met Ricky Williams, probably the nicest athlete I've ever met in my entire life. Guy was a fucking class act. Jose Canseco, real piece of shit. He sucked. Jerry Rice, I met him. Guy was monotone. He was just taking pictures with people and just kind of was just allowing fans, to say what's up to him, and that's about it. So, a nice guy. Nicest guy I've ever met, though, is Charkandrick West. Holy crap, biggest smile on his face.
What's up, Smokey? It's Mike from the Sports Zone. I have had an encounter with a professional athlete. A few of them, actually. One was David Morgan from the backup tight end for the Vikings. Pretty good guy, actually. He was just out with his friends and his family after the Green Bay-Minnesota game. He offered me to take a picture with him. That was cool. Tommy Kramer and Henry Thomas came to where I live, too. They did a charity softball event. It was cool.
What up, Smokey? Pigs Picks here. Hey, man, I love this topic because, I actually got to meet a lot of guys during my security time when I used to work event security. My favorite person I ever met was DeForest Buckner. It was a 49ers event. It was a charity event, I believe. And, dude, Buckner was cool as shit. This was like his second year. And he was just wanting to take photos and talk, all that fun jazz. And Joe Staley, amazing dude, big teddy bear kind of guy. Good guys.
Bit of a long story, but to summarize, I'm waiting in the airport for my sister to come home from college, and then we see the Boston Red Claws come off of their plane out of the gate, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. That's the Celtics G League team. And then I see this 7'5", dark as hell boy Taco Fall, and I want to walk up to him, and I'm like, hey, bro, can I get a picture with you? Completely ignored me, and then his boy Carson Edwards standing right next to him gave me the dirtiest look.
Oh, that honestly triggers me back to the Emmitt Smith moment. Oof, man, I feel like, but man, those are some good stories, man. Ricky Williams, I wish, man, that's Ricky Williams is one guy that got to get on the Smoke Show. Okay, I got one more quick story for y'all. Now, this one was more recent, back in my bartending days when I was running a place called Cinema Public House in downtown Vancouver. Now, I had quite a few interactions with various members of the Vancouver Canucks in my time there, but this one takes the cake. I remember it was a Wednesday, and I was approaching the end of my shift, and I knew that the Canucks had been playing earlier that day because, well, we had it on in the bar, and they had lost 5-2 to the Dallas Stars, I believe. And like I said, I'm approaching the end of my shift, so I work the main bar there. We shut down at 1 a.m., and then just the one section of the restaurant, which is the lounge, stays open until 3 a.m. And so I'm shutting my bar down, and through the front entrance, which I had a pretty good viewpoint of, I see a couple players and their agents walk in. The players were Ryan Kesler and Kevin Bieksa, neither of whom play for the Canucks anymore. And so I'm like, knowing that they kind of got their shit beat in earlier in the night, I'm like, they're probably not going to want to be around people, and they just want a place to chill. And like literally when I say my main bar closes up, there was like curtain dividers down the whole thing. And I see them, and I look over from the corner. I'm like, call them over. I'm like, hey guys, I know you had a rough night. If you want to just chill at this bar, I'll serve you drinks, whatever, and you can just kind of be away from things. And they're like, yeah, cool, whatever. So they sit down, and this is not a thing where I can just clock overtime in. I'm staying there for free at this point. But I'm like, yeah, you know, whatever. Let's give these guys what they need. Give them a little privacy, and they can be on their way. So I'm like, all right. So they're just drinking rounds of Guinness and shots of Jameson, while their agents are talking agenty things, and they're talking other things about some players that I will keep private. But yeah. Anyways, long story short, it comes time for the bill. And at this point, I've been there like an hour and a half, almost 2 hours for free. Just serving these guys, letting them have some privacy. And so I'm like, do you guys want that separate? You want that all together? Like, I'll just throw it all in one. I'm like, all right, cool. Print it off, and I turn around with the receipt in my hand, and both Bieksa and Kesler had their cards out. And I'm like, oh, what guy do I take? And not wanting to be rude, I took the closer one, which was Ryan Kesler. I shit you not when I say I have had homeless people tip me at a higher rate than Ryan fucking Kesler. Fucking prick. I know how much you made. I know. And just like, I stayed there for free. Took hours out of my day, which I would have been doing nothing in, except for probably smoking weed and watching Game of Thrones at that time. And the whole time, every time I think of that story, I'm like, why, oh, why did I not just reach out and take BX's card? Fuck you, Ryan Kesler. Smoke Show! For our last segment today, I'd like to quickly go over my predictions for the remainder of the NFL playoffs. Now, I actually compiled this for my guest spot on friend of the show, HoovTube's new episode coming out with your boy, Hoov! To catch my craziness on full display, check out the return of HoovTube dropping soon. Now, I must preface this with the honest truth. I'm not trying to be hot takey with these predictions, but by the end, you might not believe that. So let's roll through these. 3 of the first 4 games I have very close. I have the Bengals upsetting the Titans with the return of Derrick Henry getting, maybe I should say the score, 34-28. With 3 touchdowns from the returning Derrick Henry, which I'm assuming he's going to play. 2 on the ground, 1 through the air, but it's not going to be enough to stop these Bengals on a roll. Joe Cool, ice in his veins, is proving it game by game. Next up, we have the first of 2 overtime games, and I've got Green Bay taking out San Francisco by 3, 31-28 in overtime. And purely just off of the strength of Aaron Rodgers. Clay-eating motherfucker. Next up, we got another overtime game, and I've got Tampa Bay taking out LA 24-21. Same spread. I just I don't think it'll be as high scoring. And then again, going with a more veteran quarterback who's done it. Last up, not the most close game, but I got KC taking out Buffalo 37-29. So that leaves us with conference finals of the Bengals and the Chiefs and Tampa Bay and Green Bay in the NFC. And I have Tampa Bay taking out Green Bay for a return trip to the dance. And the Bengals taking out Kansas City in a huge upset statement game from the young Bengals, which leaves us with a Super Bowl matchup of Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. And I have the upset of the century with the Bengals coming out on top for a massive Super Bowl win that will not be forgotten, which has to happen to even have a chance of matching up to the halftime show this year. Right? Holy crap, I can't wait for that. That's it, man. I'm taking the Bengals to win the fucking Super Bowl. Yeah, that's it. You have it. I want to thank each and every one of you for sticking it out to the end. Before we sign off, I'd like to give a shout out to the following people who contributed their stories for today's pod. On SportsMe, you can find the Joey Wright, GamePoint Live, also on Instagram and TikTok as GamePoint_live. I got you. Derek, Bomic Big Time, Fantasy Schven, The Avenged Nerd, and Peng's Picks. And, oh, crap. I lost the last one. Fuck. Oh, yeah, brother. You are all fucking gems in my books and friends of the Smoke Show. If you wouldn't mind, shoot us a follow on Twitter at _smoke_show. And you can follow me at SmokeyHellNFL on Twitter. That's the more active one. And on the SportsMe app. My name is Josh Smokey Hell Nelson, and all I've got left to say is, where there's smoke, there's fire.